into the FNP's coverage of the 2018 midterm elections. My name is Colin McGuire. I am here, of course, again with Alan Etzler.
It's great. Another hour. We're a little late. We're a little behind schedule, but we had some breaking news.
And that's what we're going to get to right now. From what I understand, there was some trouble at the polls, Alan. Can you please take us into what happened there?
So there were a few incidents tonight, and so one of the big ones is some voters in District 6 were actually given ballots to cast votes for the District 8 Congress member. So as a lot of folks will know, District 6 is a pretty hotly contested race between the Democratic candidate David Trone, who had an unsuccessful run in 2016, where John Delaney won that seat. He's been running against Ami Hober, the Republican candidate. In District 8, it's Jamie Raskin is the incumbent there, running against John Walsh. Some of these voters in this precinct were given ballots. It was about 73 voters total in the area. 8 of them were given ballots that had the wrong district on them and forced to vote for the wrong race. So to correct that, the Board of Elections is offering them the chance to cast a provisional ballot with the correct race in it. So it was a total of 8 voters who cast ballots for the wrong race.
So we don't think this should have a huge effect?
No, not at all. And there also was another issue at the polls. This one affected about 200 people countywide, but more impressively, 5,500 people statewide. 5,500 people could have voted twice. The reason for that is the State Board of Elections did not count the votes, who early voted. They didn't get a list of who voted early, and so this gave some voters the chance to vote twice should they have tried to do so. Again, I said this affected 200 voters in Frederick County. Board of Elections Director Stuart Harvey said this morning they took a list to the different precincts to let people know, a list of the names of who they missed, to let people know if you see them, don't let them vote twice. We're trying to prevent that. So we won't know exactly how many people voted twice until Wednesday, but there is up to 5,500 people who could have voted twice.
Do you think that people would do that?
Yeah, I do.
You do? You think they would go vote twice?
Yeah, I think they'll vote 30 times if they'll let them.
Well, fair enough. So you can read more about that on fredericknewspost.com. Of course, we'll keep an eye on those stories throughout the night, as well as these races. And one of the races that we're going to move to now is the race for District 1. I know we wanted to talk about this. What can you tell us about it, Alan?
Right, so again, this is a county council race. It's between the incumbent Democrat, Jerry Donald, who won in 2014 against Ellen Bartlett in a close race. He won by 96 votes. So that was very, very close. He's running against Kevin Grubb, a Republican, as you can see there on the right side of the screen. He's a retired Frederick Police Department. When he retired, he was the deputy chief of police. He's been in the county for a long, long time. Republicans targeted this seat on the county council as one that they felt like they could take because the district is very heavily Republican. But Jerry has been a solid ally of Jan Gardner on the council. He's been very supportive of her, and so Democrats who are turning out to vote for Jan Gardner could influence this race also.
Well, that should be interesting. That and by the way, we only have, I think, one more update before we'll start seeing.
One more update, yeah. Early voting total should start rolling in around 8 o'clock.
And that's when it will get fun. Another race we want to talk about, of course, is the governor's race. Incumbent Larry Hogan, Republican, seems to be well liked throughout the state by both parties. Ben Jealous, of course, is challenging him. How do you see this playing out? I saw an attack ad from Larry Hogan's people, I think, earlier this week. It was pretty ruthless. Yeah,
this has been a pretty ruthless campaign. Even if you go back and watch the debate that they had, they took pretty much nonstop shots at each other. And so it got pretty heated. It's been heated through the attack ads. You've seen Hogan tout his popularity. The question is whether or not that'll translate to votes. You know, there were, Ben Jealous has a lot of things working against him, especially through the rest of the Democrats in power. He didn't get endorsements right away from many of the powerful Democrats. He never ended up getting an endorsement from Peter Francho, a well-liked Democratic comptroller for the state.
Do you know why that is? Did Francho ever speak on that?
Well, Francho himself, he serves on the Board of Public Works with Larry Hogan. He works so closely with Larry Hogan, he said he wanted to try to stay neutral. I don't know if they would have had a more moderate Democrat if he would have said that. But Ben Jealous has been criticized by Republicans for his his views, which are pretty progressive. I think we're seeing a changing of that nationwide. I'm not sure if it'll hit Maryland this election season, but the Democrats have been becoming moving a little bit more to the left and being more progressive candidates. That said, what we're looking for in this is if that popularity for Larry Hogan translates to crossover votes. He's going to need some crossover votes because Maryland is such a blue state. He's probably going to do fine in Frederick County. Republicans are anticipating historic numbers for him, whatever that means.
Historic.
Which could be something pretty high, but he has to do well throughout the rest of the state. And so the couple places that we want to look for is, I mentioned earlier, early voting. So he trailed Anthony Brown by 9 in early voting. If he's trailing Anthony Brown by less than that when the numbers come out at 8 o'clock, things are going to bode really well for him. The other place
you mean Ben Jealous?
No, Hogan.
Oh,
if Governor Hogan is trailing Ben Jealous by less than 9, things are going to bode really well for him.
That's what I thought you meant. We're live, people. We're live.
We're doing it live.
That's right.
And so the other place we want to look at is Montgomery County. In 2014, Governor Hogan got 37% of the vote in Montgomery County, which is pretty good for a Republican candidate. If he's at all in the 40s, tonight will probably be a cakewalk for him.
Okay.
And then obviously Baltimore City. Baltimore City has such influence over state races. There's so many people in Baltimore City. Hogan did 22% in 2014. If he's doing higher, he's been you mentioned his campaign ads. He's been running a lot of campaign ads specifically targeted towards folks in Baltimore with the African American community saying they're supporting him. And so if he does a little bit more than 22% in Baltimore City, that bodes well, and it shows he's gaining popularity amongst the African Americans. So that's kind of what we're looking for tonight. And if we see some of those things, this might be not as close as a race as people think.
One race that we also want to get to, of course, is in the Maryland Senate. I know that you have a lot to say about this, so
yeah.
I'm just going to get out of the way.
No, this was a fun one. We had some controversy, Maryland Senate, State Senate District 3 between the Republican Craig Giangrande, a local businessman, and longtime political figure, Senator Ron Young. Senator Young was former mayor of Frederick, obviously, from the late 70s for more than a decade. He's been in the Senate since 2010, so he's looking for another term, a third term, I guess. And yeah, this one has been interesting. It's been heated. They've come at each other. They've put mailers out against each other. They've asked for debates, and then we scheduled a debate, and they went at each other.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You can listen to on fnppodcast.com. You had them in, and can you talk a little bit about the tone of that debate and how that went?
Yeah, and so a lot of it was, you know, Senator Young obviously wants to play to his record. He's been a loyal Democrat for so long, and he's getting repaid with it this year with so much money being poured into his race from the state Senate Democrats like Senate President Mike Miller. So he played to his record, and Craig Giangrande criticized him on that record, and he criticized him for what he called Senator Young wanting to put shooting dens, is what he calls them, and essentially they're safe houses for people to use heroin safely. They're very controversial. Senator Young thinks people are going to do it, they're going to do it, so they should do it in a safe environment. Craig Giangrande is a former police officer himself, was adamantly against that, as he's been pretty adamantly against everything Ron Young has said. And so, yeah, if you go back and listen, all of those issues were hot button topics. Immigration was another one. Senator Young has stated in the past that that Craig Giangrande hires illegal immigrants at his Burger King restaurants. Whether or not that would be a problem is I guess irrelevant, but Craig Giangrande says he does not, and so it's just a lot of back and forth of he said, he said.
Wow, that scenario sounded a little bit like The Wire. Did you ever watch The Wire?
I didn't.
About having a designated place to do drugs?
Yeah, I think that's essentially what they are. I'd never seen The Wire, but yeah. Hamsterdam,
people, look it up. You can Google it. We're live and direct. And then finally, we'll wrap up with this before. And by the way, we should also say you still have some time to go out and vote. If you have not voted yet, you should go out and vote. That's our little public service announcement. But questions always abound, and questions will be answered all night, but there's one question in particular we want to talk about right now. Tell us about this question. It involves firefighters and collective bargaining?
Yeah, so this is question D, and I want to make sure that we mention you can still go out to the polls. They close at 8, but if you're in line by 8, you can vote,
true.
no matter how long the line is.
Yes.
If you're in line by 8, you can vote. But yeah, question D has been one of the hotly debated topics of this election season. For those who don't know, there are 6 ballot questions, 2 at the state level and then 4 at the county level. Essentially, question D amends the county charter, so the governing document of the county. It amends that so that the firefighters union, have more collective bargaining rights. Currently, the firefighters union can only negotiate with the county executive over wages and benefits. This would expand that to be able to negotiate anything they want, including cancer screenings, overtime, things like that. But it also includes, and this is what a lot of Republicans have been really adamantly against, it includes binding arbitration. So essentially, binding arbitration would mean that when the firefighters union and the county executive get together to negotiate, if they come to an impasse, this amendment would make it so that the county hires a neutral arbitrator to hear both arguments and then make the decision. Whatever that decision by the neutral arbitrator is required by law to be funded in the county's budget. And so if the neutral arbitrator says they deserve $12 million in raises, well, it doesn't matter what the economic environment of the county is, it has to be funded. So that's what a lot of folks have had, a lot of the Republicans especially have had a problem with. This all kind of started, and it depends on who you talk to, based on conversations with folks in the union and some of the candidates. This seems to have started when the firefighters union wanted to negotiate overtime pay. So currently, for a firefighter to work overtime, to get overtime pay, which what me and you know is time and a half, they have to work 20 hours above their initial 40 hours. Okay. So essentially, you don't get overtime pay, you don't get the time and a half until you've worked 61 hours. So they wanted to negotiate that, and they were told that's not a negotiating point, it's not a wage or a benefit, it's overtime. So it's something totally different. The county council member, Jessica Fitzwater, initially drafted legislation regarding this that expanded that expanded these collective bargaining rights. I'm not sure what happened to it. She never introduced it. The firefighters union decided they were going to go after their own charter amendment, and they said they were going to include collective bargaining, and that's what they did. They got it on the ballot, and so here we are. It's been one of the most, and if you hang out on Frederick County social media, which I don't recommend, by the way, but if you do, it is all over the place. People are either adamantly against it, they're supporting it, they're basing votes for candidates off who supports it, and so it's been that big of an issue.
Well, judging by what you know so far, does it look like it's going to go one way or the other?
I really can't tell. I mean, this one really seems like a toss-up. I can't even say if I base it on turnout. I know it seems like most of the candidates are not supportive of this because of the budgetary effects it could have. I don't know if the candidate's opinion matters. That's really all I know about this in terms of what it might look like tonight. I think we might find out early, but I don't know.
Well, hopefully we do find out early, because the next time we see you, it will be in the 8 o'clock hour. Like we said before, maybe 8 o'clock, maybe 8:15, maybe 8:07. We don't know, but you should come on back. We're going to talk about some early numbers when we come back, right?
Yeah, and we're going to look at some precincts that are they've had long waits, and they're going to be pretty impactful in this election.
Yeah, so hopefully the murky picture will start to become a little more clear as this night goes on. We're going to be with you all night until the bitter end, Alan.
Last call.
Last call, as he said earlier.